Before the standardized unit of currency, how did human societies calculate value? It is a question that challenges our modern assumptions about economics itself. We tend to view money as an inherent necessity, the universal lubricant for trade. But what if money was simply one incredibly effective solution to a much older, more fundamental problem? In pre-monetary economies, the exchange of goods and services relied on far more abstract metrics than metal weight or stamped paper. Value wasn't measured by commodity. It was often defined by scarcity, necessity, or sheer effort. Consider the trade of labor, a farmer trading a day's planting time for a family's medicinal knowledge, or the immediate need for fresh water exchanged for preserved grains. These exchanges required complex social accounting, an invisible ledger tracked not on parchment but in memory and mutual obligation. This system was far more intricate than simple bartering. It was an entire conceptual framework for survival, one that operated entirely outside the visible mechanisms of a market. This system demanded trust, a social currency far more valuable than gold. It required intricate knowledge. The cradle of civilization, Mesopotamia, offers our first glimpse into this sophisticated economic reality. In early Sumerian city-states, the stability of urban life hinged on a complex exchange network centered around staple commodities like barley and sesame oil. These goods were not merely sustenance, they functioned as foundational units of value. To build monumental ziggurats or to sustain specialized artisans, the potters, the metalworkers. Priests, a simple trade was insufficient. Instead, transactions involved multi-commodity exchanges. A farmer might contribute a measured measure of grain, while simultaneously receiving skilled labor in exchange for an allocated portion of oil and textiles. This system demonstrates that the value of any single commodity was not fixed. It was determined by the relative need and scarcity of every other good in the community. It was an intricate web of mutual dependence, requiring sophisticated social organization to manage its inherent complexity. Cuneiform tablets provide the receipts for these exchanges, detailing rations of barley allocated to temple workers and soldiers alike. This record-keeping was crucial, transforming localized bartering into a proto-state economy capable of supporting burgeoning urban populations. Yet even this sophisticated system faced profound structural limitations. Pure barter, while functional on a small scale, is inherently inefficient for the growth of complex societies. The fundamental challenge is what economists call the double coincidence of wants. For two people to trade, they must not only want each other's goods, but also possess exactly what the other party needs at that precise moment. Imagine a skilled potter who desires grain, and a farmer who has surplus barley. If the potter does not happen to have tools or finished pottery items that the farmer requires in return, no transaction can occur, regardless of how much grain is available. This requirement for simultaneous, specific mutual need severely constrains trade volume and slows economic expansion. It forces communities to rely on localized exchanges rather than creating a broad, fluid market capable of supporting large-scale specialization. Archaeological records reveal this bottleneck. Specialized goods often remain trapped in local economies. This systemic friction meant that even abundant resources could fail to reach their most valuable markets, ultimately stifling the potential for large-scale trade and sophisticated civilization. The solution to localized bottlenecks lay not in more goods, but in a standardized unit of value. As economies grew more complex, communities began seeking items that could transcend local utility, things accepted by diverse groups as a reliable measure of worth. This marked the crucial transition toward what we might call early pseudo-currencies. These were commodities that served less as objects of desire, and more as generalized mediums of exchange. Consider cattle, which in many ancient legal codes functioned explicitly as ox money, establishing their value not through scarcity but by decree. Similarly, essential staples like salt or standardized measures of grain began to function as accepted units of account across broader regions. While these goods were far from the universally valued coinage we recognize today, their adoption represented a profound intellectual leap. The agreement that one commodity could reliably represent the labor and value of another, paving the way for true monetary systems. This early acceptance wasn't always smooth. Disputes over quality or quantity were common. Yet this foundational agreement, the mutual trust in a standardized commodity, was the bedrock upon which sophisticated trade networks and eventual metallic currency would be built. Moving further east, we encounter one of the most enigmatic urban centers of the Bronze Age, the Indus Valley civilization. At sites like Mohenjo-Daro, the sheer scale of development challenges our understanding of pre-metallic trade. What is particularly striking is not just the city's organization, but the remarkable uniformity found across vast geographical distances. We observe standardized weights and measures, cubical shirtweights that maintain an astonishing consistency and proportion, whether they are recovered from Gujarat or Harappa. This suggests a sophisticated economic infrastructure operating far beyond localized bartering. The standardization of these commodities implies formalized exchange rates and reliable long-distance trade agreements. These people were not simply trading goods. They were participating in a complex system of commodity valuation that required mutual trust and systemic coordination, pointing toward an advanced economy built on standardized exchange value rather than mere barter. This consistency suggests centralized oversight in trade standards. The standardized seals bearing unique symbols further confirm this interconnected network. Such uniformity implies a shared economic understanding, a proto-currency of trust that underpinned their vast commercial reach. But the story of ancient wealth is far richer than mere commodities. To focus solely on grain or livestock misses the fundamental engine of early economies: human connection. In many pre-state societies, value was not measured by weight but by reputation and reciprocity. A skilled healer's knowledge, for instance, could be more valuable in a crisis than a dozen bushels of corn. Similarly, the metallurgical expertise required to forge a reliable plowshare represented years of accumulated non-transferable capital. These were exchanges of skill, service, and obligation, forms of social currency that built complex societies from the ground up. The ability to reliably call upon a specialized artisan or mediator was the true measure of wealth. This system demanded deep trust and rigorous memory, forming intricate webs of mutual dependency. It suggests an economy where one's standing within the community, their reputation, constituted the most liquid asset of all. This social ledger was maintained through ritual exchange, a gift today ensuring aid tomorrow. Such obligations underpinned everything from marriage alliances to military cooperation, proving that trust itself was the most enduring form of ancient capital. Building on this foundation of mutual obligation, these localized bartering webs expanded into vast, interconnected regional networks. Consider the Mediterranean basin during its Bronze Age peak. This was not merely local swapping. It was a complex system of transcontinental commerce built entirely upon diverse goods and human ingenuity. Copper from Cyprus flowed across sea lanes to meet cedar timber harvested in Lebanon. Grain from Egypt traveled north, balancing out raw materials needed for specialized crafts in Minoan Crete. These exchanges were managed by sophisticated trade chains, a multi-stage process where goods passed through multiple hands before reaching their final destination. The scale of this pre-metallic global commerce was staggering. It demonstrates that even without standardized currency or advanced writing systems, ancient societies maintained a remarkably complex economic equilibrium, linking distant economies into a single, interdependent web of exchange. This interdependence meant that disruptions anywhere, a poor harvest in Egypt, a raid on Cyprus, could ripple through the entire system. Such vulnerabilities underscore the delicate balance of these networks, proving that economic stability relied as much on diplomacy and reliable passage as it did on the sheer value of their traded commodities. The intricate web of barter, while robust in local terms, faced inherent limitations. The need for a double coincidence of wants meant that trade often stalled simply because two parties lacked precisely what the other needed at that moment. As societies grew in complexity and scale, these localized exchanges became inefficient bottlenecks. A breakthrough was required, not necessarily a new commodity, but a universally accepted measure of worth. Gold and silver emerged into this vacuum. They were not initially viewed as currency, but rather as reliable weights, pourable, durable, and scarce enough to maintain value over vast stretches of time. Their intrinsic metallic weight provided an objective standard against which goods could be valued. This transition was subtle. It was the gradual acceptance of a standardized unit of account that paved the way for formalized coinage, transforming valuable metal from mere trade good into a fundamental store of power and wealth. This standardization allowed merchants to calculate complex debts and manage large inventories across vast distances. The metal itself became a universal ledger, a tangible representation of abstract economic value, fundamentally reshaping empires' treasuries. To view these early systems merely as primitive precursors is to misunderstand the ingenuity of human commerce. Barter was not an evolutionary failure. It was a sophisticated, self-regulating economy that solved complex logistical problems using localized expertise and trust networks. The eventual need to overcome its inherent friction, the double coincidence of wants, did not invalidate the system. Rather, it revealed its conceptual boundaries. These historical solutions, standardizing weights, establishing fungible goods, and adopting generalized mediums like coinage, were not mere patches. They were intellectual leaps that codified abstract economic principles. By transforming a valuable commodity into a universal unit of account, ancient societies laid the foundational blueprint for modern financial systems. The concept of transferable value, standardized measurement, and credit itself. The echoes of these early exchanges resonate through every modern market transaction. From Mesopotamian grain measures to Roman silver denarii, these innovations established abstract value beyond physical goods. This conceptual framework, the promise of future exchange, is the bedrock of global finance. The enduring lesson is that human economic ingenuity continually refines its own systems.